Admiral Hyeonsu stood on the bridge of the stellar dawn, watching the stars through the wide viewing window. He had been patrolling this area of space for 20 years and nothing ever happened here. The forbidden sector was empty. It had been empty since the humans disappeared 300 years ago. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of computers. His crew worked at their stations, checking sensors and monitoring communications. Everything was normal. Everything was always normal out here. Then Yuna's voice crackled through the communication system. "Admiral, this is Captain Yuna on the Silent Arrow. We have something strange." Hyeonsu walked to the communication panel. Yuna commanded his best scout ship. She never called unless something was really wrong. "What do you have, Captain?" "Sir, we're picking up an energy reading. It's coming from deep in the sector." "The computers say it's impossible." Hyeonsu frowned. The forbidden sector had been scanned thousands of times. There was nothing there except old battlefields and dead planets. "Send me the data." The information appeared on his screen. Hyeonsu stared at the numbers. The energy reading was massive. It was bigger than anything their ships could produce. It was bigger than anything anyone could produce. "Timon, what do you make of this?" Hyeonsu called to his young navigator. Timon looked up from his station. He was fresh from the academy, smart and eager. "Sir, the reading is coming from the old human territory. But according to our maps, there's nothing there." Commander Jiwon walked over to them. She was the intelligence officer, and she knew more about the old war than anyone else on the ship. "Admiral, this doesn't make sense. We've been monitoring that area for decades. If something that big was there, we would have seen it." Hyeonsu studied the data again. The energy signature was not just big, it was moving in patterns. Patterns meant intelligence. Patterns meant someone was controlling it. "Yuna, how close can you get to that signal?" "We're already moving closer." "Sir, but Admiral, there's something else." "The signal is getting stronger. Whatever it is, it's waking up." Hyeonsu felt a cold feeling in his stomach. The humans had been the most advanced race in the galaxy. Their technology was beyond anything the Coalition had ever seen. When they disappeared, everyone thought they had left for another galaxy. But what if they hadn't left? What if they had been waiting? "All ships change course. We're going to investigate." The stellar dawn turned toward the signal. Behind them, 5 other Coalition ships followed. They were good ships with good crews. But Hyeonsu couldn't shake the feeling that they were heading into something dangerous. As they flew deeper into the forbidden sector, the space around them grew darker. This part of the galaxy had been empty for so long that even the stars seemed dimmer here. Old wrecks of ships floated in the darkness, reminders of the Great War that had ended centuries ago. "Sir, we're getting interference," reported the communications officer. "Something is jamming our long-range signals. Can you clear it up?" "No. Sir, it's not normal jamming. It's like something is singing." Hyeonsu raised an eyebrow. "Singing?" "That's the only way I can describe it, sir. Listen." The officer put the signal through the bridge speakers. A low, haunting sound filled the room. It wasn't music, but it wasn't random noise either. It sounded almost like voices, but no voice he had ever heard before. Timon shivered at his station. "Sir, that sound, it makes me feel strange." Other crew members nodded. The sound seemed to reach into their minds, touching something deep inside them. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Turn it off," Hyeonsu ordered. The bridge became quiet again, but the feeling remained. Everyone looked uncomfortable, like they had heard something they weren't supposed to hear. "Captain Yuna, are you hearing this signal too?" "Yes, sir. My crew is affected by it. Some of them are saying they can understand it, but when I ask them what it means, they can't explain." Hyeonsu didn't like this. In all his years of service, he had never encountered anything like this. The Coalition had rules about investigating unknown signals. They were supposed to call for backup and wait for the science ships, but something told him there wasn't time for that. "How long until we reach the source?" 2 hours, sir." "Good. All ships maintain formation. And keep monitoring that signal. I want to know if it changes." As they flew closer, the signal did change. It grew stronger and more complex. The voices became clearer, though still impossible to understand. Some crew members reported dreams while they were awake. Others said they could see things that weren't there. Commander Jiwan studied the historical records on her computer. Admiral, I've been looking at the old files from the Human War. There are reports of strange signals like this one. The reports say that human ships could do things to enemy mines. They could make people see things, feel things. Are you saying this is a human ship? I'm saying it could be human technology. But sir, if it is, then it's been out there for 300 years. What has it been doing all this time? Hyensu didn't answer. He was thinking about the stories he had heard as a child. Stories about the humans and their impossible machines. Stories about ships that could think and weapons that could reach into your mind. The coalition had always believed the humans were gone. They had built their civilization on that belief. But what if the humans had never left? What if they had been waiting in the dark, planning something? Sir, we're approaching the signal source, Tiemann reported. And Admiral ... You need to see this. On the main screen, something appeared in the darkness ahead of them. It was huge, bigger than any ship Hyensu had ever seen. It was dark and silent, but energy flowed around it like lightning. The ship looked old and damaged, but somehow still powerful. My God, whispered Commander Jiwan, it's beautiful. Hyensu stared at the massive vessel. He could feel its presence in his mind, like a whisper at the edge of his thoughts. The ship was calling to them, welcoming them, and that scared him more than anything else. All ships, hold position. Prepare for detailed scans, and someone find out what that thing is. But deep in his heart, Hyensu already knew what they had found. They had found something that should have stayed lost. Something that would change everything they thought they knew about the galaxy. The mysterious ship waited in the darkness, patient and silent. And somewhere in its depths, something ancient was beginning to wake up. The massive ship hung in space like a sleeping giant. As the coalition fleet moved closer, its true size became clear. The vessel was 10 times larger than their biggest warship. Its hull was black metal covered with strange markings that seemed to glow with their own light. Scans are complete, Admiral, reported Commander Jiwan. The ship is definitely human in design, but the technology is far beyond anything we have on record. The hull is made from materials we don't recognize. Hyensu studied the readings on his screen. The ship showed signs of battle damage, but it was still intact. More importantly, it was still powered. Energy flowed through its systems like blood through veins. Any signs of life? The scans can't penetrate the hull completely, but there are power readings throughout the ship. Something is definitely active in there. Captain Yuna's voice came through the communication system. Admiral, my crew is requesting permission to return to base. The signal from that ship is affecting them badly. 2 of my officers are reporting severe headaches and strange dreams. Hyensu looked around his own bridge. His crew was working, but they kept glancing at the view screen. Some of them looked pale and nervous. Others seemed almost fascinated by the mysterious vessel. Negative, Captain. We need to investigate this ship. Prepare a boarding party. Sir, is that wise? We don't know what's on that ship. That's exactly why we need to go aboard. Commander Jiwan, select a team for boarding. Include Marines Dongho and Minho and Tech Specialist Sora. Jiwan nodded. Yes, sir. What are our objectives? Find out what that ship is and why it's here. And find out if there are any humans still alive on board. An hour later, the boarding shuttle approached the mysterious ship. Commander Jiwan sat with her team, checking their equipment one final time. The shuttle bay was quiet except for the hum of engines and the soft breathing of nervous crew members. Marine Dongho was a veteran of many missions. He had fought in border conflicts and pirate raids. But as they approached the human ship, he felt something he had never felt before. Fear mixed with curiosity. The ship seemed to be calling to him. You feeling it too? Asked Marine Minho, his partner for over 5 years. Yeah, like it wants us to come aboard. Tech Specialist Sora was busy with her scanner equipment. She was young but brilliant, one of the best computer experts in the fleet. The electromagnetic readings are incredible. This ship is generating power in ways our science can't explain. The shuttle found a docking port that seemed designed for their type of craft. As they connected, the ship's systems automatically activated, creating a perfect seal. "Well, that's convenient," muttered Dong-ho. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Beyond was a corridor lit by soft blue light. The walls were smooth metal covered with symbols that hurt to look at directly. "Atmosphere is breathable," reported Sora, checking her instruments. "Temperature is comfortable. It's like the ship is welcoming us." They moved into the corridor. Their footsteps echoed strangely, as if the sound was being changed by the walls themselves. The corridor was wide enough for 4 people to walk side by side, but it felt cramped and open at the same time. "Commander, look at this," called Minho from up ahead. On the wall was a plaque with writing in the old human language. Below it was a translation in Coalition Standard. "Iron Will," read Jiwon. "That's the ship's name." As they walked deeper into the ship, they began to understand its scale. The corridors went on forever, branching off in all directions. Rooms opened into vast spaces filled with equipment they couldn't identify. Everything was clean and functional, as if the crew had just stepped away for a moment. "This is impossible," whispered Sora. "This ship has been here for 300 years, but everything looks new." They found what looked like a command center. Banks of computers lined the walls, their screens showing information in the human language. In the center was a chair that was clearly designed for a human captain. "Can you access their computers?" Jiwon asked Sora. "I'm trying, but the interfaces are completely different from ours. Give me some time." While Sora worked, the others explored the area. Dong-ho found personal items that belonged to the crew. Photos of human families, books written in their language, cups that still smelled faintly of coffee. "Commander, there are no bodies," he reported. "No signs of violence. It's like the crew just vanished." Minho was examining the walls. The strange symbols seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. "These markings, they're not just decoration. They're doing something." "What do you mean?" "Watch." Minho placed his hand on one of the symbols. It glowed brighter, and suddenly they could all hear something. Voices, speaking in whispers too quiet to understand. "Don't touch anything else," ordered Jiwon quickly, but it was too late. The ship was responding to their presence. Lights began turning on throughout the command center. Screens activated, showing star maps and technical diagrams. And the whispers grew louder. "Commander, I'm getting something," called Sora excitedly. "The computer is trying to communicate with me. It's learning our language." Text appeared on the main screen, shifting from human symbols to Coalition Standard. "Welcome aboard the Iron Will. Please state your purpose." Iwan stepped forward. "I am Commander Jiwan of the Coalition Fleet. We detected your ship and came to investigate." Coalition. "Fleet not recognized. Please provide authorization codes." "We don't have authorization codes. We're not human." The ship was quiet for a long moment, then new text appeared. "Non-human entities detected, scanning for hostile intent." The walls around them began to glow brighter. The whispers became clearer, and suddenly they could understand them. Voices speaking in their own language, telling them things they had never heard before. Dongho grabbed his head. "Make it stop. The voices, they're in my mind." Minho tried to help his partner, but he was having problems too. His eyes were wide and unfocused, as if he was seeing things that weren't there. "SORA. Can you shut it down?" demanded Jiwon. "I'm trying, but the ship won't let me. It says it needs to complete its evaluation." The scanning seemed to go on forever. The voices told them about the war that had ended 300 years ago. They showed them images of battles between humans and creatures from deep space. They whispered about sacrifice and duty and the price of protecting the galaxy. Finally, the scanning stopped. The voices faded to background whispers. The text on the screen changed. "Evaluation complete. Non-hostile entities confirmed. You may proceed with your investigation. Warning: psychological effects may occur during extended exposure to ship systems." "What kind of psychological effects?" asked Yuan. Human consciousness integration protocols are still active. Prolonged contact may result in memory sharing, enhanced cognitive abilities, and temporary loss of individual identity. Dongho laughed, but it didn't sound like his normal laugh. Too late for warnings, I can already hear them. The humans who used to live on this ship, they're still here in the walls and the computers. They're trying to tell us something important. Yuan looked at her team with growing concern. They had been on the ship for less than 2 hours, and already it was affecting them, but they had found something incredible. A human ship with technology beyond their understanding. Technology that could think and feel and remember. We need to get back to the shuttle and report to Admiral Hyeonsu. But as they walked back through the corridors, Jiwon couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't leaving alone. Something from the Iron Will was coming with them. Something that would change everything they thought they knew about humans, about the war, and about what was waiting for them in the dark spaces between the stars. Back on the stellar dawn, tech specialist Sora sat in the computer lab. Staring at the data she had copied from the Iron Will, the information was like nothing she had ever seen. The human computers used patterns that seemed alive, growing, and changing as she watched. Any progress? Asked Admiral Hyeonsu as he entered the lab. Sora rubbed her tired eyes. She had been working for 6 hours straight. Sir, this technology is incredible. The humans didn't just build computers. They built minds. Artificial minds that can think and feel and remember everything. Can you access their main systems? I think so. But Admiral, there's something you need to know. The ship's computer isn't just a machine. It talks like a person. It has opinions and emotions. And it keeps asking about someone called Captain Woojin. Hyeonsu frowned. Show me. Sora activated her communication link with the Iron Will. Text immediately appeared on her screen. Tech Specialist Sora, have you located Captain Woojin? His presence is required for full system activation. Who is Captain Woojin? Sora typed. Captain Woojin was the commanding officer of this vessel. He was lost during the final battle 300 years ago. His consciousness was preserved in our memory banks. Hyeonsu stared at the screen. Are you saying this Captain Woojin is still alive? Alive is not the correct term. His mind exists within our systems. Would you like to speak with him? Before anyone could answer, the screen changed. A face appeared, clearly human but somehow different. The features were sharp and the eyes glowed with the same blue light as the ship's corridors. Greetings, Coalition forces. I am Captain Woojin of the Iron Will. I apologize for the confusion. I have been sleeping for some time. Hyeonsu stepped closer to the screen. Captain, we thought all humans had left this part of the galaxy. Most did, but some of us chose to stay behind. We had a job to finish. The digital face smiled sadly. Though I must admit, 300 years is longer than we expected it to take. What job? Protecting the galaxy from something terrible. Something that comes from the space between spaces, hungry for life itself. Dr. Yunji entered the lab at that moment. She was the ship's psychologist, called in to help with the crew members who had been affected by their time on the Iron Will. Admiral, we have a problem. Marines Dongho and Minho are reporting shared dreams. They're seeing memories that aren't their own, and it's spreading to other crew members. On the screen, Captain Woojin nodded, the psychological effects are beginning. I'm sorry, but contact with our technology always causes this. Your minds are trying to connect with the human consciousness stored in our systems. Is it dangerous? Asked Dr. Yunji. Not dangerous, but permanent. Once the connection is made, you will carry part of us with you always. You will understand things you never understood before. You will see the galaxy as we saw it. Ensign Kyung, the communications officer, suddenly spoke from her station across the room. I can hear them talking, the voices from the ship. They're trying to warn us about something. She hadn't been part of the boarding party. She hadn't even been near the Iron Will, but somehow the ship's influence was reaching her across space. What are they saying? asked HYEON-Su. Kyung single quotes S eyes were distant, as if she was listening to something only she could hear. They're coming. The enemies that the humans fought. They're still out there, and they're coming back? Captain Woojin's image on the screen became more solid, more real. She's right. The Devourers are returning. We've been monitoring their movements for decades. They're drawn by the growth of new civilizations. Your coalition has become large and successful. That makes you a target. What are these Devourers? Demanded Hyeon-Su. Creatures from dark space. They consume life energy, leaving dead worlds behind. The humans fought them for 50 years before we realized conventional weapons were useless against them. Sora was frantically taking notes. How did you fight them? We changed ourselves. We merged human consciousness with our technology. We became something new, something that could touch their minds and hurt them, but the process was costly. Dr. Yoonji was watching her patients with growing concern. More crew members were showing signs of connection with the Iron Will. They spoke in whispers, sharing dreams and memories that belonged to dead humans. Captain Woojin, can you stop the psychological effects? I could, but I won't. You need to understand what's coming. Your people need to be prepared. The Devourers will be here soon, and when they arrive, only those who carry human consciousness will be able to fight them. You're talking about changing us, making us part human. I'm talking about survival. The galaxy survived the last Devourer. Invasion because humans were willing to sacrifice their individual existence for the greater good. Now someone else must make that choice. Admiral Hyeon-Su felt a heavy weight settling on his shoulders. How long do we have? Days, maybe weeks. They're already in the outer systems, consuming the life from dead worlds to build their strength. Across the ship, more crew members were being affected. Engineer Nari found herself understanding the Iron Will systems without being taught. Navigator Teeman saw star maps in his dreams, showing safe routes through space that didn't exist on any coalition chart. Sir, called the bridge officer over the communication system, we're detecting movement in the outer sensor network. Something big is coming this way. Captain Woojin's image flickered. They're here sooner than expected. Admiral, you have a choice to make. Allow my ship to protect your people, or watch them die when the Devourers arrive. What does protection cost? Everything you are and everything you might become? Those who accept the merger will gain the power to fight the Devourers. But they will also carry the memories and dreams of every human who died to create this technology. Hyeon-Su looked around the room. His crew was changing before his eyes. They spoke with voices that carried echoes of human words. They moved with confidence that came from borrowed memories. They were becoming something new. Do we have a choice? There is always a choice, Admiral, but choose quickly. The Devourers feed on hesitation and fear. They grow stronger while we debate. On the sensors, something massive was moving through space toward them. Something that made the Iron Will look small. Something hungry and patient and very, very old. The crew of the Stellar Dawn looked to their admiral for guidance. But Hyeon-Su was listening to new voices in his own mind, voices that whispered of duty and sacrifice, and the terrible price of protecting those you love. The transformation had already begun. The only question now was whether they would embrace it in time to save themselves and everyone else in the galaxy. The memories came like a flood. Admiral Hyeon-Su stood on the bridge of the Stellar Dawn, but he could also see through the eyes of a human captain from 3 centuries ago. He watched as massive creatures emerged from the dark between stars, their bodies made of twisted metal and hungry darkness. Captain Woojin, show them everything, he heard himself say. Though he wasn't sure if the words came from his mouth or his mind, the Iron Will's AI responded by opening the deep memory banks. Suddenly, every person on the Coalition fleet could see what the humans had seen: the first contact with the Devourers, the failed attempts to fight them with normal weapons, the gradual realization that only consciousness itself could harm these creatures. Lieutenant Seojin gripped his navigation console as visions filled his mind. He saw human worlds dying, their populations drained of life until nothing remained but empty husks. He saw human fleets fighting desperately against enemies that could not be killed, only delayed. "My God," he whispered. They fought for 50 years, 50 years of losing, of watching their people die. Chief Engineer Nari was experiencing the memories of human engineers who had built the Iron Will. She could feel their desperation as they worked to create something that could save their species. She understood now why the ship felt alive. It wasn't just technology. It was the collective will of an entire civilization poured into metal and circuits. "They didn't just build a weapon," she said, tears streaming down her face. "They built a tomb, a living tomb for their entire race." Dr. Yunji was documenting everything, but she was also experiencing the psychological profiles of humans who had undergone the consciousness merger. She felt their fear, their courage, and their ultimate acceptance of what they had to become. "Admiral, the merger process is irreversible. Once someone connects fully with the Iron Will systems, they become part of the human collective. They retain their memories and personality, but they also carry the experiences of everyone who came before." On the main screen, Captain Wujin's image was becoming clearer and more detailed. "We discovered that the devourers feed on individual consciousness. They cannot consume a collective mind. That is why they couldn't destroy us completely. But the price was our individual existence." Haixian-Su was struggling to maintain his own identity as human memories pressed against his mind. He could remember being a child on Earth, though he had never been to Earth. He could remember the day the first Devourer ship was spotted, though he had been born centuries after that event. "How many humans are stored in your systems?" "All of them, every human who agreed to the merger. Millions of minds working together to keep the galaxy safe." Marine Dongho was no longer himself. He stood at his post, but his eyes held the experience of human soldiers who had fought in battles across the galaxy. When he spoke, his voice carried the accent of a dozen different worlds. "The Devourers aren't just random predators," he said. "They're intelligent. They plan their attacks. They study their enemies, and they're patient. They've been waiting 300 years for us to forget about them." "Waiting for what?" asked Commander Jiwan. "For the galaxy to grow again. For new civilizations to develop. For fresh life to consume." The sensor readings were getting worse. The thing approaching them was massive beyond comprehension. It was larger than a space station, larger than some moons, and it was not alone. "Multiple contacts," reported Ensign Kyung, though her voice now carried the calm professionalism of human communications officers. "At least 20 ships, all of them larger than anything in our fleet." Captain Wujin's image flickered with urgency. "The Devourer fleet has arrived. Admiral, you must make your choice now. Allow us to defend you, or watch your people die." "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "Open your mind completely to our systems. Allow your crew to merge with human consciousness. Become part of us, and gain the power to fight them." Haiyan-Su looked around his bridge. His crew was already changing. They moved with borrowed confidence, spoke with inherited knowledge, thought with expanded minds. But they were still themselves, still his people. "If we do this, will we still be coalition officers?" "You will be more than that. You will be the guardians of the galaxy as we were, as we still are." The first Devourer ship came into visual range. It was a horror beyond description, a twisted mass of metal and flesh that hurt to look at. Energy crackled around it like lightning, and where it passed, space itself seemed to dim. "All ships, battle stations," ordered Haiyan-Su. But even as he gave the command, he knew their weapons would be useless. The Devourers opened fire first. Their weapons were not beams or missiles, but waves of pure hunger that reached out to drain the life from anything they touched. The coalition ship shields flared and failed almost immediately. "Hull breach on Deck 7, reported Tactical Officer Yemen. But his voice was calm, filled with the tactical knowledge of human officers who had faced this enemy before. "Evacuating affected." "Sections, Admiral," said Captain Wujin urgently. "You must decide now. Let us help you, or watch your fleet die?" Hyeonsu closed his eyes and felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders. He thought about his crew, his people, the billions of lives in coalition space who depended on him to protect them. Do it, he said quietly. The iron will came alive with purpose. Energy flowed from its systems into the coalition ships, connecting their computers to the human collective. The merger happened quickly, but it felt like drowning in an ocean of memories and experiences. Each crew member felt themselves expanding, becoming more than they had been. They retained their own thoughts and feelings, but now they also carried the wisdom and experience of countless humans who had died to save the galaxy. Officer Sunwoo felt the change most strongly. He was young and eager, and the human memories flowed into him like water into an empty cup. Suddenly, he understood tactics and strategies that his people had never developed. He knew how to fight enemies that existed partially outside normal space. Weapon systems online, he reported, though he was no longer sure if he was speaking or if the words came from some human officer who had died centuries ago. Engaging Devourer Fleet. The Iron Will fired first, but its weapons were unlike anything the Coalition had ever seen. Instead of energy beams or missiles, it launched concentrated packets of human consciousness. Guided by will and determination rather than computers, the Devourers recoiled as if burned. For the first time in the battle, they showed fear. Impossible, one of them spoke, its voice reaching directly into their minds. The humans are dead. We consumed their worlds. We are not dead, replied Captain Woojin, speaking through every transformed crew member at once. We are evolved, and we remember what you did to our people. The battle was about to begin in earnest. But now the Coalition fleet was no longer alone. They carried the memories and determination of an entire species that had given up everything. To protect the galaxy, the Devourers were about to learn that some things are too strong to consume, too determined to die, and too angry to forgive. The Devourer ships moved like living nightmares through space. Their hulls twisted and changed shape as they flew, covered with eyes that saw into dimensions beyond normal space. When they fired their weapons, reality itself seemed to scream, "Admiral." Hyeonsu watched from the bridge as his fleet's conventional weapons struck the enemy ships without effect. Energy beams passed through them like light through water. Missiles exploded harmlessly against hulls that existed partially outside normal space. Our weapons are useless, reported Tactical Officer Yeoman, though his voice now carried the calm knowledge of human officers who had faced this same hopelessness centuries ago. Not useless, said Captain Woojin's voice from the speakers. Ineffective. Against this enemy, the Devourers feed on physical energy. They absorb it and grow stronger. But consciousness, pure thought and will, burns them like acid. Officer Sunwoo stepped forward. He was young, barely out of the academy, but the human memories flowing through his mind made him understand things that veteran officers could not grasp. Captain, I volunteer to undergo full merger with your systems. Hyeonsu turned to stare at him. Sunwoo, you don't understand what you're asking. Yes, I do, sir. The human memories show me everything. Full merger means losing my individual identity. I become part of the collective consciousness. But it also means gaining the power to hurt these creatures. Dr. Yoonji stepped forward, her face pale. The psychological cost is enormous. Based on the human records, full merger subjects retain their core personality, but they also carry the thoughts and emotions of millions of other minds. Many of them go mad from the experience. Then we'll go mad together, said Sunwoo simply. Sir, look at our sensors. The Devourers aren't just attacking us. They're moving toward coalition space. If we don't stop them here, they'll consume every living world in the galaxy. On the main screen, the truth of his words was clear. Beyond the immediate battle, dozens more Devourer ships were emerging from the dark between stars. They were heading directly for the core worlds of the Coalition, where billions of people lived in ignorance of the threat approaching them. How long do we have? Asked Hyeonsu. Hours, replied Captain Woojin, maybe less. The Devourers have been planning this attack for centuries. They know exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage. Engineer Nari was studying the data from the Iron Will systems. The human technology was incredible, but it came with a terrible price. Admiral, I've analyzed the merger process. It requires complete surrender of individual will. The subject must be willing to die as themselves in order to be reborn as part of something larger. I'm willing, said Sunwoo without hesitation. So am I, added Marine Dongho. The big soldier's eyes were already distant, filled with memories of human warriors who had made the same choice. And me, said Marine Minho, standing beside his partner. One by one, other crew members stepped forward. Engineers, officers, medical staff, communications specialists. They all understood what they were volunteering for, and they all made the same choice. You don't have to do this, Hyein-Su told them. Yes, we do, replied Chief Engineer Nari. Sir, I can feel them in my mind. The humans who built this ship, they were terrified too. But they did what had to be done because someone had to do it. Captain Woojin's image appeared on every screen in the fleet. Admiral, the volunteers must come aboard the Iron Will for the process. But I warn you, once it begins, there is no going back. They will become something new, something that has never existed before. What will they become? Bridges between species. Carriers of human determination and alien perspective. They will be your people, but they will also be us. And together, we might be strong enough to drive the Devourers back into the dark. The volunteers boarded shuttles and flew to the Iron Will. Sunwoo sat with his hands folded, trying to memorize everything about being himself before he lost the chance forever. Are you scared? Asked Dongho. Terrified, admitted Sunwoo. But the human memories show me what happens if we fail. Empty worlds, dead civilizations, the galaxy consumed by hunger that can never be satisfied. The Iron Will welcomed them into its depths. The corridors seemed to pulse with life as they walked toward the merger chambers. The walls whispered with voices of humans who had walked this same path 300 years ago. Remember us? The voices said. Remember what we were and what we chose to become. The merger chamber was a vast room filled with equipment that seemed to grow from the walls like living metal. In the center were chairs designed to hold subjects during the consciousness transfer process. Who goes first? Asked Captain Woojin. Sunwoo stepped forward without hesitation. I do. As he sat in the chair, cables extended from the walls to connect with his mind. The process began immediately. Sunwoo felt himself dissolving, his individual thoughts spreading out to merge with the vast network of human consciousness stored in the ship's memory banks. For a moment, he was everyone who had ever undergone the merger. He felt their fear, their courage, their desperate love for the life they were trying to protect. Then he felt himself reforming, but he was no longer just Sunwoo. He was Sunwoo plus humanity, a new being that carried the best of both species. I can see them, he said, opening eyes that now glowed with the same blue light as the ship's systems. The Devourers. I can see how they think, how they feed, and I know how to hurt them. One by one, the other volunteers underwent the process. Each emerged changed, carrying new knowledge and capabilities. They were still themselves, but they were also something more. The merged crew returned to their ships with new purpose. They understood their weapon systems in ways their original designers never intended. They could feel the flow of energy through space, see the weak points in Devourer armor, sense the fear that these ancient predators tried to hide. All ships prepare for attack, ordered Admiral Hyein-Su. But now his fleet was no longer fighting alone. They carried the tactical knowledge of humanity's greatest military minds, the determination of a species that had refused to surrender, and the collective will of millions who had given up their individual existence to protect the galaxy. The Devourers sensed the change immediately. Their formation wavered as they encountered resistance they had not felt for 3 centuries. Impossible, their voices whispered across space. The humans are extinct. We consume their worlds. We are not extinct, replied the merged crew in perfect unison. We are transformed, we are evolved. And we are very, very angry. The real battle was about to begin. But now the coalition fleet had a chance, carried by the sacrifice of brave individuals who had chosen to become something greater than themselves. Officer Sunwoo returned to the Stellar Dawn, but he was no longer the young academy graduate who had left. His movements were precise and confident, carrying the experience of countless human officers. When he spoke, his voice held echoes of authority that came from borrowed memories of command. "Admiral, I can see the Devourer fleet structure now. They're not just random ships. They're a collective organism, each vessel serving as a specialized organ in a larger body." Captain Yuna watched him with growing unease. She had known Sunwoo since he joined the fleet. He had been eager and friendly, always quick to laugh. Now he stood perfectly still, his glowing eyes focused on something beyond normal sight. "Sunwoo, are you still?" "You?" He turned to look at her, and for a moment she saw a flicker of the young officer she remembered. "I'm still here, Captain, but I'm also more than I was. I carry the memories of Captain Park, who died defending Earth, Commander Lee, who held the line at Centauri Station, Lieutenant Kim, who gave her life to save a transport full of refugees." His voice was calm, but tears ran down his face as he spoke. "They're all with me now. Their courage, their knowledge, their love for the life they protected. I am myself, but I am also them." Dr. Yunji was monitoring the psychological changes in all the merged crew members. What she found disturbed her. They were becoming increasingly similar in their behavior patterns, speaking in unison without planning, moving with coordinated precision that suggested shared thought processes. "Admiral, the merger is affecting more than just individual consciousness. The subjects are developing a group mind. They are beginning to think and act as a single entity." Marine Dongho overheard her comment. He turned from his weapon station, his face showing the same eerie calm as the other merged crew members. "Dr. Yunji, you misunderstand. We haven't lost our individuality, we've gained perspective. When you can feel the thoughts and emotions of millions of others, your own problems seem less important." "That's exactly what I'm worried about," she replied. "You're losing your connection to your original identity." Engineer Ji-hoon had undergone only partial merger, retaining more of his original personality than the others. He served as a bridge between the transformed crew and those who remained unchanged. "Doctor, it's not loss, it's growth. I can still remember being afraid of making mistakes, worried about disappointing my family, concerned about my career. But now I also remember fighting for the survival of entire worlds. Individual concerns don't disappear, but they're balanced against larger responsibilities." Captain Yuna found herself caught between fascination and horror as she watched her crew change. They were becoming incredibly efficient, working together with perfect coordination. But they were also becoming something alien, something that thought in ways she couldn't understand. "Sunwoo, show me what you see when you look at the Devourer fleet." He gestured toward the main screen, and the display changed to show tactical information that their sensors had never been able to detect before. "The large ships are processing centers, where they convert consumed life energy into usable power. The smaller ones are harvesters, designed to drain individual minds. The medium vessels are coordinators, maintaining communication across the fleet." The detail was incredible. He could see weak points in their formation, predict their movement patterns, understand their strategy in ways that should have been impossible. "How do you know all this?" "Because humanity fought them for 50 years. Every battle, every defeat, every small victory was recorded in the collective memory. We know them better than they know themselves." Admiral Hyen-Soo was struggling with command decisions as his crew transformed around him. The merged officers were incredibly capable, but they were also becoming something he couldn't fully trust. Their loyalties seemed to extend beyond the coalition to include obligations he didn't understand. "Sunwoo, I need to know. Are you still loyal to the coalition?" "Yes, sir. But I'm also loyal to humanity, to the memory of those who sacrificed everything to protect the galaxy. Sometimes those loyalties align perfectly. Sometimes they don't." The honesty was disturbing. Hyen-Soo needed officers who would follow orders. Without question, not philosophers who weighed every command against cosmic responsibilities. The Devourer fleet was moving closer, and conventional tactics were proving useless. The enemy ships phased in and out of normal space, attacking from angles that didn't exist in three-dimensional reality. "Sir, we need to use the merged crew's abilities," urged Commander G1. She had resisted the merger process herself, but she could see that normal tactics would only result in the destruction of the fleet. What exactly can they do? Officer Sunwoo answered before anyone else could speak. "We can fight on their level, sir. Human consciousness learned to exist partially outside normal space. We can follow them into the dimensions they use for attack, meet them in the realm of pure thought." That sounds extremely dangerous. Everything about this situation is dangerous, Admiral. But we have capabilities now that no military force has ever possessed. We can coordinate our attacks through shared consciousness. We can predict enemy movements through collective analysis. We can strike at their weak points with weapons guided by will rather than targeting computers. The merged crew members were already moving to their stations with purpose that seemed predetermined. They worked together like parts of a single organism, each knowing exactly what the others would do. Marine Minho was loading weapons with ammunition that glowed with the same blue light as the ship's systems. "Sir, these rounds are infused with human consciousness. They'll disrupt devourer feeding patterns and cause actual damage to their ships." "How is that possible?" "The ammunition is bonded with memory fragments from human soldiers. When it strikes a devourer, they experience the rage and determination of everyone who died fighting them. It burns them from the inside." Captain Yuna watched her transformed crew with a mixture of pride and loss. They were becoming incredibly effective, but they were also drifting away from everything that had made them who they were. "Dr. Yoongji, in your professional opinion, are we still dealing with coalition officers, or have they become something else entirely?" "Doctor." Yoongji had been studying the psychological profiles constantly. "They're still our people, but they're carrying additional consciousness that affects every decision they make. It's like they're possessed by benevolent ghosts who share their goals but have different priorities." The first direct engagement began as the devourer ships came within weapons range. The merged crew responded with tactics that no coalition officer had ever been trained to use. They fired weapons that struck targets in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They coordinated attacks through shared thoughts rather than verbal communication. Officer Sunwoo stood at the tactical station, his hands moving over controls that seemed to respond to his thoughts rather than his touch. Engaging primary target. All weapons, fire for effect. The Stellar Dawn's modified weapons struck the lead devourer ship with rounds infused with human consciousness. For the first time in centuries, the creature screamed in pain that could be felt across multiple dimensions. But the cost of the attack was immediately visible. The merged crew members staggered as they absorbed the psychic backlash from their enemy's pain. Blood ran from their noses, and their eyes glowed brighter with borrowed light. "Status report," demanded Admiral Hyeon-soo. "Target damaged but not destroyed," reported Sunwoo. His voice was steady, but his hands shook from the effort of the attack. "Sir, we can hurt them, but each engagement costs us something we can't get back." The battle was just beginning, and already Hyeon-soo could see that victory would require sacrifices he wasn't sure he was willing to make. His crew was becoming something powerful and alien, guided by the ghosts of a dead civilization and driven by purposes that extended far beyond military duty. The question was no longer whether they could win. The question was what they would become in the process of winning, and whether anything recognizable would remain when the fighting was over. The Iron Will came fully alive as dozens of coalition crew members completed their transformation. The massive ship pulsed with energy that seemed to flow like blood through living veins. Every surface glowed with the blue light of human consciousness, and the air itself hummed with the voices of millions who had died to create this moment. Captain Woojin's presence filled every system, no longer just an image on a screen, but a living force that guided the ship's every function. His consciousness had expanded to include all the merged crew members, creating a collective mind that spanned multiple vessels. "Admiral Hyeon-soo," his voice spoke from every speaker in the fleet simultaneously, "the time for restraint has ended. We must use our full capabilities, or the galaxy will fall to the devourers. On the bridge of the stellar dawn, Admiral Hyansu watched his transformed crew work with efficiency that bordered on the supernatural. They moved in perfect coordination, each knowing what the others would do before they did it. Officer Sunwoo stood at the tactical station, his glowing eyes seeing targets across multiple dimensions. "Sir, I can see their command structure now. The Devourer fleet has a primary consciousness that controls all the others. If we can reach it, we can disrupt their entire operation." "Where is it?" Sunwoo's hand moved over the tactical display, highlighting a ship that was larger and more twisted than the others. It pulsed with dark energy that seemed to absorb light from the surrounding space. "There, sir. The ship that looks like a black star. That's their equivalent of a queen, the consciousness that spawns and controls all the others." Tactical officer Yaman nodded in agreement, his mind now linked to the collective intelligence. "The humans tried to destroy it during the final battle 3 centuries ago. They failed, but they learned how it thinks, how it feeds." Captain Yuna had been watching the transformation of her fleet with growing alarm. The merged crew members were incredibly capable, but they were also becoming something she couldn't recognize as her friends and colleagues. "Sunwoo, you're talking about attempting something that killed the entire human military force. What makes you think we can succeed where they failed?" He turned to look at her, and for a moment she saw past the glowing eyes to the young officer she remembered. "Because we're not just human consciousness anymore, Captain. We're a fusion of human determination and coalition tactical thinking. We have capabilities that neither species possessed alone." The Devourer fleet was adapting to their attacks, learning from each engagement. The enemy ships were becoming harder to hit, their defensive patterns more complex. But the merged crew was adapting too, their collective intelligence growing stronger with each battle. Engineer Ji-hoon reported from the engine room, his partially merged consciousness serving as a bridge between the transformed and unchanged. "Crew, Admiral, the Iron Will is offering to share its primary weapon systems with our ships. But the energy requirements are enormous. We'll have to reroute power from life support and artificial gravity. Do it." The fleet's ships began to change as human technology integrated with coalition systems. Weapons that had been designed for conventional warfare were modified to fire concentrated packets of consciousness. Shields were reconfigured to protect against psychic attacks as well as physical damage. Dr. Yoongi was documenting everything, but she was also struggling with her own psychological reaction to the changes around her. "Admiral, I'm losing my ability to evaluate the crew's mental state. They're becoming something beyond my understanding." "Are they still our people?" "They're still individuals, but they're also part of something larger. It's like trying to understand a single cell while it's part of a living organism." The battle reached its climax as the Iron Will led a direct assault on the Devourer command ship. The massive human vessel moved through space like a living thing, its hull rippling with energy patterns that hurt to look at directly. Captain Woojin's consciousness expanded to fill the entire fleet, coordinating attacks across dozens of ships with precision that no human commander could have achieved alone. "All vessels, concentrate fire on the primary target. Use everything we have." The merged crew members stood at their stations like warriors from ancient legends, their eyes glowing with inherited purpose. They fired weapons that existed partially in normal space and partially in the realm of pure thought. Striking at an enemy that fed on fear and despair, Officer Sunwoo felt the collective will of every human who had ever died fighting the Devourers flowing through him. Their courage, their rage, their desperate love for the life they protected became his strength. "Firing main batteries," he reported. Though his voice was now the voice of thousands speaking in unison, the weapons struck the Devourer command ship with the concentrated fury of an entire civilization. For the first time in millennia, the ancient creature felt something it had almost forgotten, genuine fear. "Impossible," it spoke directly into their minds, its voice like the sound of dying stars. "You are just another species to be consumed. You cannot comprehend what we are." "We comprehend exactly what you are," replied Captain Woojin through the collective consciousness of the merged crew. You are hunger without purpose, consumption without growth, death without meaning, and we reject everything you represent. The battle became a clash between two forms of collective consciousness. The devourers fought with the accumulated hunger of countless consumed civilizations. The human coalition hybrid fought with the determined will of two species that refused to surrender. Admiral Hyeon-soo realized that he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. His crew was no longer just human or coalition. They had become something new, a fusion of species that created capabilities neither could achieve alone. Captain Woojin, what happens after this battle? What do my people become? They become the guardians of the galaxy, Admiral. They carry the memory of what was lost and the determination to prevent it from happening again. They become the bridge between what was and what must be. The Devourer command ship began to collapse as concentrated consciousness burned through its defenses. The creature inside was ancient beyond measure, but it had never faced an enemy that could match its psychological warfare with pure determination. You have won this battle, it spoke as its ship disintegrated around it. But we are eternal. We will return when you have forgotten us again. Then we will be waiting, replied the collective voice of the merged crew. We will always be waiting. The remaining Devourer ships fled into the dark between stars, their formation broken and their purpose defeated. For the first time in 300 years, they had been forced to retreat, but victory came with a price that was only beginning to be understood. The coalition fleet was forever changed, carrying consciousness and memories that belonged to a dead civilization. They had gained the power to protect the galaxy, but they had also accepted a burden that would last for generations. Admiral Hyeon-soo looked around his bridge at crew members, who were still his people but were also something more. They had become living monuments to human sacrifice, carriers of a torch that could never be allowed to go out. The battle was over, but the real challenge was just beginning. They had to decide what to do with the power they had gained, and what it meant to be the inheritors of humanity's greatest gift and greatest curse. 6 months had passed since the battle with the Devourers. The Iron Will hung in space near Coalition Central Station, no longer a mysterious derelict but a living monument to the price of protecting the galaxy. The massive ship pulsed with gentle blue light, its systems maintained by the merged consciousness of those who had chosen to become something more than they were. Captain Yuna stood on the observation deck of her new command ship, watching the Iron Will through the viewport. She had been promoted to fleet captain after Admiral Hyeon-soo underwent partial merger to better coordinate with his transformed crew. The change in command structure had been necessary, but it still felt strange to give orders to officers who carried the memories of dead heroes. Captain, we have a situation, reported Communications Officer Haniel. She was young, barely out of the academy, and one of the few crew members who had not been affected by the merger process. Long-range sensors are detecting unknown ships. Approaching the outer rim, Yuna turned from the viewport. Devourers? No, ma'am, the signatures are different. These appear to be ships from the Korgan Empire. They're requesting permission to meet with our transformed crew. The Korgan Empire was one of the largest powers in the galaxy, a militaristic civilization that had always viewed the Coalition with suspicion. If they were coming here, it meant word of the battle had spread beyond Coalition space. Patch me? Through to the hybrid collective. That was what they called the merged crew members now. It wasn't an official designation, but it had become the accepted term for those who carried both their original consciousness and human memory patterns. Officer Sunwoo's voice came through the communication system, though it now carried harmonics that suggested multiple minds speaking together. Captain Yuna, we're aware of the approaching ships. The Korgan Empire wants to understand what happened here. They're frightened. Frightened of what? Of us? Of what we've become? They've heard reports that Coalition officers can now fight enemies that exist outside normal space. They want to know if we're still the same species they've dealt with for centuries. Yuna understood their concern. The transformation of the Coalition fleet had created ripple effects throughout the galaxy. Other civilizations were struggling. To understand what it meant that one species had gained access to technology that could affect consciousness itself, Dr. Yunji entered the observation deck, carrying a datapad filled with psychological evaluations. She had spent months studying the long-term effects of the merger process, and her findings were both encouraging and troubling. Captain, I've completed my analysis of the hybrid collective. The good news is that they retain their individual personalities and memories. The concerning news is that they're developing capabilities we don't fully understand. What kind of capabilities? They can communicate across vast distances without using technology. They can sense threats that our instruments can't detect. Some of them report dreams that seem to be glimpses of possible futures. Yuna frowned. Are they becoming psychic? They're becoming something new. The merger with human consciousness has activated latent abilities in their brains. They're evolving into something that bridges the gap between individual awareness and collective intelligence. The Korgan ships arrived at the station 3 hours later. Their delegation was led by General Kexen, a veteran warrior who had fought in dozens of campaigns across the galaxy. He was accompanied by scientists and philosophers, all trying to understand what the coalition had become. The meeting took place in the station's main conference room. Captain Yuna sat at one end of the table, representing the unchanged coalition personnel. At the other end sat members of the hybrid collective, their glowing eyes and synchronized movements making them appear almost alien. Captain Yuna, General. Kexen began. The Korgan Empire has heard disturbing reports about recent events in this sector. Our intelligence suggests that your people have undergone some form of genetic modification that gives them supernatural abilities. Officer Sunwoo? Answered before Yuna could speak. General, we haven't been genetically modified. We've been consciousness-enhanced. We carry the memories and experiences of the human species, along with their accumulated knowledge about threats that exist beyond normal space. And what gives you the right to wield such power? The same thing that gave humans the right 3 centuries ago. The responsibility to protect life in the galaxy from forces that would consume it completely. Engineer Ji-hoon, who had undergone only partial merger, served as a translator between the two groups. General, the hybrid collective, isn't interested in conquest or domination. They're focused on a single goal, preventing the return of the Devourers. These Devourers you speak of, are they truly as dangerous as you claim? Captain Woojin's presence filled the room as his consciousness spoke through multiple collective members simultaneously. General Kexen, would you like to see what happened to civilizations that couldn't defend themselves against the Devourers? The air shimmered, and suddenly everyone in the room could see visions of dead worlds. Planets stripped of all life, their populations consumed by creatures that fed on consciousness itself. Cities reduced to empty husks. Technology rendered useless against enemies that attacked the mind directly. General Kexen stepped back, his face pale. How are you showing us this? Through shared consciousness, General. This is what humanity learned to do. They merged their individual minds into a collective intelligence that could fight on the same level as the Devourers. And now you carry this ability? We carry the responsibility, the knowledge, the burden of knowing what's out. There in the dark between stars, waiting for civilizations to grow large enough to be worth consuming. Dr. Yunji spoke up from her position as a neutral observer. General, the transformation isn't permanent in the sense of genetic change. It's a sharing of consciousness that allows individuals to access collective knowledge and abilities. But it does fundamentally change how they see the galaxy and their place in it. Are they still loyal to their original species? They're loyal to life itself, General. That includes their original species, but it extends beyond species boundaries to encompass all conscious beings in the galaxy. The meeting continued for hours, with the Korgan delegation asking increasingly complex questions about the nature of consciousness, the ethics of transformation, and the long-term implications of the merger process. Finally, General Kexen asked the question that everyone had been avoiding. What happens now? Do you plan to spread this transformation to other species? Captain Yuna and the hybrid collective exchanged glances that carried more communication than words could convey. "That's not our decision to make," Yuna replied. "The technology exists. The knowledge of how to use it is available. Each species must decide for themselves whether the benefits outweigh the costs," Officer Sunwoo added, "but we will be here, watching and waiting. If the Devourers return, if new threats emerge from the spaces between stars, we will be ready to fight them." Years later, the Iron Will had become a pilgrimage site for species across the galaxy. Some came to learn about the merger process. Others came to pay their respects to the humans who had sacrificed their individual existence to save everyone else. The hybrid collective continued to grow as volunteers from dozens of species chose to undergo the transformation. They became the galaxy's guardians, carriers of accumulated wisdom and determination that spanned multiple civilizations. Captain Yuna, now an elderly woman, stood once again on the observation deck, watching new recruits board the Iron Will for their transformation ceremony. Recruit Haniel, no longer young but still enthusiastic, stood beside her. "Captain, do you ever regret what happened here?" Yuna thought about the question for a long time. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret that humanity had to die as a species in order to save the galaxy. But I don't regret that they made that choice, and I don't regret that our people were willing to carry their torch forward. What do you think the galaxy will look like in another 100 years? Different. Better, I hope. Protected by beings who remember what it cost to gain that protection." In the depths of the Iron Will, Captain Woojin's consciousness continued to guide the transformation process, helping new volunteers merge their individual awareness with the collective intelligence of the galaxy's guardians. He was no longer human, and the volunteers were no longer solely their original species. They had become something new, something that carried the best qualities of every civilization that chose to contribute to the collective. The Devourers were still out there, waiting in the dark between stars. But now the galaxy was ready for them. Consciousness had learned to defend itself, individual will had been amplified by collective determination, and the price of protection was shared by those brave enough to accept the responsibility. Humanity was gone, but their gift lived on in the minds and hearts of every being who chose to become a guardian. They had given up their individual existence to create something that could protect the galaxy forever. And in doing so, they had achieved a form of immortality that no single species could ever claim. The Iron Will pulsed with gentle light, a beacon of hope and determination that would burn for as long as conscious beings existed to tend its flame. The galaxy was safe, protected by the